At least 10 people are dead in Brazil after a dam holding back a mining waste burst on Friday. The collapse caused a reddish-brown sludge to bury buildings and much of the surrounding areas. Firefighters and rescue teams are still searching for the mud with the survivors there. More than 200 people are reportedly missing. The cause of the collapse still unknown.
Sana'a, the capital of ancient Yemen. Built 2,500 years ago, nothing much has changed in the old city, situated on a high volcanic plateau on the borders of the Arabian Peninsula. Over centuries, Sana'a survived, but in the space of 5 years, the most recent war destroyed part of the city. Sami is one of many tour guides in the old city. The time of tourists and peace is now a thing of the past.
When the war broke out, even though I survived the bombings, I lost everything. My job, my life. At one point there was hope for Yemen, but the tourists are gone. Everything has collapsed.
The Sana'a Heritage Office is always open. The atmosphere here, bitter as well.
UNESCO rules are very clear in terms of World Heritage protection to prevent a protected city from becoming a war zone. Otherwise, it constitutes war crimes. 5 years have passed, yet I've never seen any UN official come to witness these crimes.
Sami leads us through the heart of the old city. Families live here amidst the ruins of bombing raids. In this neighborhood, the last attack killed 10 people.
We are not interested in politics. We are not Houthis. We are simply people of the old city. We have lived here for generations. Why are we bombed?
Like many of Sana'a's inhabitants, this family of 7 have lived for 2 years in a building that threatens to fall apart at any moment.
Look at what they've done. I am scared all the time. Scared for my children, scared for my nieces, scared of more bombs that could hit us. This is no longer living.
In 2015, UNESCO placed the old city of Sana'a on the list of World Heritage Sites in danger. The air raids have not stopped in northern Yemen.
Administration taking sides in Venezuela's crisis, backing the country's opposition leader, refusing to pull U.S. diplomats out of that country. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is saying this, quote, the U.S. does not recognize the Maduro regime of the government of Venezuela. Accordingly, the U.S. does not consider former President Nicolas Maduro to have the legal authority to break diplomatic relations with the United States or declare our diplomats persona non grata, end quote. Maduro said get out within 3 days. Apparently that's not going to happen. Steve Harrigan watching the latest on this volatile situation that might shape up like a revolution. Steve.
It certainly could happen. That's what people are worried about on the ground in Venezuela and really across the world. It's not just the U.S. that is lining up to back one of these two men who is calling himself the president of Venezuela. It's really the whole world picking sides. On the one hand, you have Nicolas Maduro, a one-time bus driver and Hugo Chavez acolyte. He was reelected last year in an election widely seen as fraudulent by the U.S. and by dozens of other countries. He still has the backing of the military and the security forces. He says he's not going anywhere. He is inside the presidential palace in Venezuela. He's also backed by Russia and China. On the other side, you have the interim president, Juan Guaido. He's been recognized by the U.S., by Canada, and by much of South America. He had several 100,000 protesters out in support of him on Wednesday. He gave himself the oath of office. So you have two men calling themselves the president of Venezuela. Nicolas Maduro has sharply reacted to the U.S. move. He said the time for gringo interventions is over in South America. He's given U.S. diplomats 72 hours to get out. Right after he issued that order, the second man calling himself president said no, the U.S. diplomats don't have to leave. What really is interesting now is to watch what happens next. Will the protesters come back out on the streets? And what will Maduro do with the man calling himself president, now backed by the U.S.? Those protests were violent yesterday. There were water cannons and rocks, but they weren't crushed by security forces. The big thing that's different, Maduro has not arrested the opposition leader. He's perhaps not willing to take that risk and raise the stakes that high yet. Bill, back to you.
Thank you, Steve. Steve Harrigan watching that in a
Today in Venezuela, the president is elected by Washington. And of course, they take anyone from the street who wants to be a president.
Nicolas Maduro has cut diplomatic ties between Venezuela and the United States. From what we understand, the Venezuelan embassy in the United States in Washington, D.C. has closed.
I've decided to recall all our diplomatic and consular staff from the United States and close our embassy and consulates in that country.
Juan Guaido is an opposition figure. He's part of the National Assembly. And in front of a crowd of his supporters, he recently took an oath and declared himself to be the interim president of Venezuela, saying that Nicolas Maduro, the elected president who was just recently re-inaugurated, that he's not legitimate. Now he's gotten support from Brazil, Argentina, and Chile, and all of them are basically following the lead of U.S. President Donald Trump. Trump declared that Juan Guaido was indeed the interim president of Venezuela, even though no election took place in order to get him that title. Now, more recently, in the aftermath of Trump's recognition of Guaido, we heard some rather fiery words from U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo.
The time for debate is done. The regime of former President Nicolas Maduro is illegitimate. His regime is morally bankrupt. It's economically incompetent, and it is profoundly corrupt. It is undemocratic to the core. I repeat, the regime of former President Nicolas Maduro is illegitimate.
The public in Venezuela has been somewhat divided. With two people claiming to be the president of Venezuela, the situation could escalate very rapidly. That would not only have implications in Venezuela, but could have very global implications as well.
Former President of Ecuador, Rafael Correa, has thrown his support behind Nicolas Maduro. He accuses the U.S. and several Latin American countries of trying to bring about a coup in Venezuela.
What is happening in the world is unbelievable. Ignoring the Constitution, laws, elections and procedures, Juan Guaido declares himself interim president, something that does not exist in the Constitution. Some man appears called Guaido, and 11 Latin American countries and the US are already hailing him as leader, countries that were openly pushing for a coup. Can you imagine what kind of president they've been preparing? What if tomorrow the US doesn't like another government, democratic or otherwise? They back a self-declared president, and they want the whole world to proclaim him, and the Organization of American States to greet him with handshakes and applause. What is happening is unbelievable. We have to take a stand against it.
The longest shutdown, the longest government shutdown
in U.S. history.
Furloughed workers and contractors lined up for a free meal.
Air traffic controllers, pilots, and flight attendants are warning travelers they cannot guarantee their safety.
You have the vote. You should pass it.
No, we don't have the vote. We get it passed very easily in the House. Yeah, we would get it, Nancy, I'd have it passed in 2 seconds. And we need border security. Nancy, we need border security.
Situation which you would accept even $1 of wall funding for this president in order to reopen the government.
$1? $1? $1? Yeah, $1.
Nancy Pelosi, or Nancy as I call her.
The president doesn't know what he's talking about. He thinks it's okay not to pay people who do work. Surprise, surprise.
She doesn't want to hear the truth.
She's under total control of the radical left.
Sadly, given the security concerns and unless government reopens, I suggest we work together to determine another suitable date after government has reopened for this address, or for you to consider delivering your State of the Union address in writing.
Due to the shutdown, I'm sorry to inform you that your trip to Brussels, Egypt and Afghanistan has been postponed. Obviously, if you'd like to make your journey by flying commercial, that would certainly be your prerogative.
Maybe he thinks if government shut down, he can golf more comfortably. Unpresidential. Irresponsible.
What's going on in that party is shocking.
I don't think he really wants a solution.
What she's doing to our Constitution is a disgrace. I am very proud to announce today that we have reached a deal to end the shutdown and reopen the federal government. As everyone knows, I have a very powerful alternative, but I didn't want to use it at this time. Hopefully it will be unnecessary. I want to thank all of the incredible federal workers and their amazing families who have shown such extraordinary devotion in the face of this recent hardship. You are fantastic people. You are incredible patriots. Many of you have suffered far greater than anyone but your families would know or understand. And not only did you not complain, but in many cases you encouraged me to keep going because you care so much about our country and about its border security. Again, I thank you. All Americans, I thank you. You are very, very special people. I am so proud that you are citizens of our country. When I say make America great again, it could never be done without you. Great people. In a short while, I will sign a bill to open our government for 3 weeks until February 15th. I will make sure that all employees receive their back pay very quickly or as soon as possible. It'll happen fast. I am asking Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to put this proposal on the floor immediately. After 36 days of spirited debate and dialogue, I have seen and heard from enough Democrats and Republicans that they are willing to put partisanship aside, I think, and put the security of the American people first. I do believe they're going to do that.
Hackers have intensified their attacks on business, economies, and societies worldwide. And officials at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, are addressing the global security threat. CNET senior producer Dan Patterson has more on the conference.
Cyber attacks and data breaches can cost business and government up to $500,000 per incident. Now, this might not sound like a lot, but this adds up to over $1 trillion annually, according to some estimates. At the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, political and business leaders discussed how the public and private sector can work together to reduce the volume and severity of cyber attacks. I spoke with Hulan Zhao, the Secretary General of the United Nations International Telecommunications Union, about the biggest threat to international cyber stability. His answer was surprising and had little to do with technology.
In my opinion, personal opinion, I found that we pay attention to this issue. We have to address this issue. We have to solve this issue. But the discussion today sometimes to extend to my personal feeling that there's some kind of polarized debate. IT started to work on the technology standards to increase the security of our networks. And the famous X509 public key standards was developed by ITU 20 years ago. And we're still working on this together with England for new technology standards to increase our security, but also try to work together at the global level to see how can we make environment much safer.
Now, reducing the impact of hacks, according to the World Economic Forum, will require cooperation between government and business. Without this critical collaboration, the Secretary General believes that the digital world is critically vulnerable. These are things like your smartphone, your smart home, the power grid, and online privacy. And if countries don't get on the same page soon, the threat to cyber safety will never end. But it's not all bad news. The Secretary General believes that forums like Davos can bring together business and government to help bring some countries in from the cold. At the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, I'm Dan Patterson.
Leaders from various industries around the world have gathered in Davos, Switzerland for the 2019 World Economic Forum, where artificial intelligence is a top subject of discussion. CNET senior producer Dan Patterson interviewed founder and CEO of SingularityNet, Ben Goertzel, about AI. Dan filed this report earlier about their conversation.
Artificial intelligence is the connective thread that ties together the economy, politics, and technology here at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. Now, many of the world leaders who attend the forum are concerned that automation and AI could replace and destroy economies in both the developing world and affluent countries. Dr. Ben Goertzel, who helped build Sophia the robot, one of the first examples of human-like AI, spoke with CBS News about how AI will replace jobs but also build jobs in the near future.
Working for a living is going to go obsolete, and ultimately that will be great. What you'll have is AIs and robots making the stuff we need and providing the services that we need, and they will enjoy doing this because they were programmed to enjoy doing this. The path to get there may be significantly rocky because our society is not even that good at dealing with much smaller disruptions, let alone with a disruption as large as this one. So I actually don't worry much about the end game. I think it's going to be great, but I do worry about the path getting there, and especially in the developing world.
Goertzel and his colleagues at SingularityNet are also looking into the far future and a technology called artificial general intelligence, or robots that could exceed human intelligence. He explained that science fiction-like tech is closer than we might think.
SingularityNet project really has two motives which are achieved by the same technical design. One motive is to move toward beneficial general intelligence by creating a platform where different AIs can combine together into general intelligence where the whole has more intelligence than the sum of the parts. The other is to create a platform in which emerging general intelligence is governed and guided democratically. So everyone in the world can put AI into it, put their own data into it, and teach the AIs in the network by using it. And the governance of this network is by democratic voting of all the participants in the network rather than by voting of the shareholders of a corporation, right?
Many AI experts, including Goertzel, who is on the forefront of the field, are concerned about military firms and major technology companies dominating AI tech. He explained why this could be a problem and how open source technology could help bring balance to the tech economy.
I don't think it's a good thing that AI is being primarily developed by a handful of large government, military, and intelligence organizations, and then a handful of large companies working in close concert with them. I don't think this is going to get us in the smoothest way toward a world where, superhuman general intelligences are creating an economy of abundance for everyone.
But Goertzel remains fundamentally optimistic about AI technology. Why? Because, well, humans, he says, are fundamentally good, and humans, after all, coded the robots. For CBS News in Davos, Switzerland, I'm Dan Patterson.
Police have fired tear gas and water cannon at protesters on the 11th consecutive weekend of yellow vest demonstrations. RT Charlotte Dubinsky reports from the rallies in Paris.
It seems like it's all falling apart at the moment, Andy. I just want you to get a look behind you. See people moving away from this main street here in front of the Bank of France. That's because that's where the tear gas is coming. And as you can see, people throwing projectiles towards the police forces who are trying to move those protesters back. They'd been here in the Bastille for the last hour or so, fairly calm. And then about 10 minutes ago, decided that they were going to try and march down this street. This is Rue Saint-Antoine. And as you can see, it's now descending into chaos between the protesters throwing these projectiles and also trying to throw back the pellets of tear gas, which has been brought forward by the police. You might be able to see the protesters actually set fire just in the distance there outside a shop that's covered in scaffolding. And that is one of the reasons they're trying to push through. You can see that they've been moving these barricades here, be moving these away because there's lots of work undergoing at the moment here at the Bastille, trying to move it to create what seem to be barricades again and then setting those on fire. As you can see, those projectiles coming now from all angles of the crowd here as they try and hit the police and possibly other targets. So yes, it was calm. We were expecting it to be a calm protest on the 11th weekend, but yet again we're seeing more violence from the side of the protesters and the police then responding to that. You might be able to see a row of the CRS, the gendarmes, are coming there, and that looks like they're trying to put out the fire that was created by the protesters. I think that's a water cannon. Yes, I can confirm water cannons have now been brought in to try and deal with this situation. You can see more security forces there as these pellets, which we're literally in the path of at the moment, are being chucked towards the police. Now, this comes as France is in the middle of a national debate. Just behind us there, they've smashed the bus. That's all going down. Really is coming into quite chaos here. As I said, they're in the middle of a national debate here in France, and that itself has been angering people. Look at that, the water cannon trying to push that temporary barricade that the protesters have put up, pushing it away so it can get closer into this crowd. These rocks that the protesters are throwing are actually coming incredibly close to us. So we're going to just try and get some cover behind a tree here at the moment. We do have our safety gear on. Look at that, the water cannons in full force now, trying to move those protesters away. Absolute chaos here. We're just having to move quite a lot because that water cannon is coming round. We've just seen some people injured, including one of our colleagues in Rupley. Looks like he's received an injury as a result of what I assume are the projectiles being thrown from the protesters, from the crowds. We are trying to keep under cover here. The police, as you can see, they are getting their flashballs out now. This is to launch the tear gas. We have been told that the police officers who are using these flashballs will all be wearing body cams today so that the material can be reviewed afterwards. It's not clear how many security forces are out today. The Interior Ministry normally gives us figures. This week they've decided not to, so it's anyone's guessing game just how many security forces are out. But as you can see here, they're trying to push those crowds away. They've been successful, and now they are launching the tear gas in a bid to try and calm the situation down here. I'm being told, there you go, you get a sense of the forces coming up. But yeah, complete chaos within just a few minutes once again, as Act 11 is certainly underway here in Paris.
Well, several people were injured in those clashes. One protester, identified as a popular figure within the Yellow Vest movement, suffered an eye injury. He was taken away by paramedics.
Bienvenue à tous. Welcome to Reporters here on France 24, and welcome to our correspondent, newly arrived from Japan, Constantin Simon. Constantin, great to see you. Now, you're here with a story which I think will shock many of you. It concerns people called the hikikomori. What they go through, how they live, I've found really shocking. Tell us what this name actually means. Tell us what this is all about.
Hikikomori is a Japanese term. It means to retreat or hide inside yourself. Someone who's isolated socially, spatially, and psychologically.
So these people effectively are living in their own world, detached completely from society, like hermits.
They may still have family links. They have to eat. Often this phenomenon occurs among young people who aren't able to find a job or enter education and who decide to drop out of the competitive world, competitive Japanese society, who live off their parents playing video games. Now this is happening at all ages in society. That's what's interesting. That's the goal of this report, to show that this can affect old people also, can affect everyone. There are 500,000 hikikomori in Japan.
Il y a en tout 1 demi-million de Japonais hikikomori.
Constantin, thank you. We'll hear more from Constantin Simon after his report about the hikikomori in Japan.
While these caged birds perhaps dream of spreading their wings, Yusuke has no desire to join them. Instead, he avoids all contact with the world beyond the tiny room he's barely left in the last decade. He's a hikikomori, the Japanese word for a person who seeks isolation and who never leaves home.
I need the sound of the TV, otherwise I don't feel well. The silence reminds me that I'm alone. I often stay in my futon the whole day and just stare at the ceiling.
Yusuke had a normal childhood, but at university he was bullied by one of his professors and other students. The trauma turned him against people in general. Since then, time has stood still. He's 32, but his room looks like it belongs to a teenager. He struggles to find the words to express himself, as if he's trying to find a sense of direction in life.
It is as if I forget everything, that nothing is clear-cut. All I know is that my body feels heavy. I'm afraid of the world. Even a phone call or an email stress me out.
A form of depression or other mental health problem, a social phobia or an act of rebellion. Whatever the diagnosis, hikikomori people are united by an inability to comply with Japan's strict rules of social interaction. On the other side of the room, Yusuke's mother's preparing a meal for him. Most hikikomori depend on their parents to survive. The parents are ashamed of their children, members of a lost generation in a society that places a premium on work.
I've stood outside his bedroom door many times and begged him to come out, to go to the park or the bird shop, because he likes birds. I don't know what to do. I've consulted doctors and been to seminars. All I can say is that it's hard, really hard. He's not interested in anything. I've tried to get him interested in things, but he doesn't want to go out. It's making me depressed too.
The hikikomori phenomenon was identified in the late 1990s, when Japan's post-bubble economic troubles hit young people particularly hard. But today, the hikikomori generation is not made up of a specific age group or people from a certain social background. Most of them are men, but an increasing number are women. The ability to order just about everything they need online means they never have to leave their rooms. Alice has lived a reclusive life for a total of 5 years.